This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
Well, hey everyone, it's Mark Bayer, and you are tuned to When Science Speaks. Thanks so much for being here. Today's episode is brought to you by Bayer Strategic Consulting in Washington, D.C., which helps engineers and scientists get funding, build relationships, and gain influence through true to life training proven to get results. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Ihklaq Sidhu and Mike Grandinetti on the show today. And I want to get right to the questions, gentlemen. My first question is, you've got this new, really exciting initiative, and I'd love for you to share with listeners the details about Global Venture Catalysts. What can participants expect to experience or achieve? And just give us a sense of what it's all about.
Uh, sure. So first of all, Mark, thanks for hosting us, and pleasure to be here. And I'm happy to tell you kind of what's been evolving. So one thing that that's been happening is that through all the change that's been going on over this year, everything from the pandemic and its effect on the economy and so forth. One thing that I've observed is that it's just a lot harder for students, like top students around the world, to be able to connect, to find opportunities, to all those kind of more formal ways that people used to find their opportunities, either like campus recruiting or, whether it's like getting together at a space where you bump into people and talk to them about your interests. It's harder to do that these days. And if I had to say there's one more change that's going on in the world, is that all of a sudden we've had a tremendous digital acceleration, and now like we're teaching classes to people all over the world all the time. I have a in one of my classes, a applied data science type of class, I have a project team where one student is in New Zealand, one is in Korea, one is in Zurich, and the other one is here in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
And this has become norm, that people are just everywhere. So there's this kind of combination of like, oh, you can do things globally, and it's also becoming harder for people to like make those natural connections. And out of all these conversations, and really I'd say with a focus on what could we do to help students, we came up with this concept. I would say it evolved. It's called Global Venture Catalyst. And the idea is that we want to take a relatively short amount of time and have a bit of a virtual event or like a boot camp, but on a global scale. And what it allows you to do as a student is basically get onto a team with 3 or 4 other students or 5 students or whatever, and a mentor, get together and match with other people and work for, not a very long time, but work for a little while on something that could either be the beginning of a venture or be the beginning of at least a friendship, new network connections, or building your kind of portfolio for a company job, for going into industry. But just really like the word catalyst. And if I could just like add one more thing in to give you a better sense, and then you could ask like what I didn't explain enough. The way that we're doing the matching, we're basically now able to use an AI powered algorithm so that we can take the characteristics of people all over the world and somewhat automatically, kind of like Match.com, but for entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
automatically put them together in the teams that are most likely to be productive, either towards a corporate goal or towards a an entrepreneurial or a venture goal.
Mhm.
So hopefully that described it in a nutshell. Just go ahead.
Yeah. And
Let me
Mark,
know what.
yeah, let me just put one or two points on what Ikhlaq said. So in terms
Good.
of students being challenged, the University of Waterloo, which is considered sort of one of the preeminent technical institutes in the world, and the technology institute that Bill Gates said he hired more students from Waterloo than any other school, they've recently been advertising that in order to motivate employers to hire their incredibly talented students for co-op programs, they're providing $7,500 rebates. So when students from the University of Waterloo are struggling to find co-op opportunities
Mhm.
because companies are not showing up on campus, that's a pretty powerful signal from what's happening in the market, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, you and I know each other because I've been on the same side of the microphone as you have, and
Right.
one of the research institutions that you and I jointly interviewed for our COVID-19 innovation series, they've also talked about the fact that it's been a really, really challenging year for their students
Mhm.
to connect. So I think we want to provide that level of opportunity because it's just very, very scarce right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is great. Really, really exciting. And thanks for adding that, Mike and Ikhlaq. Your explanation really gets to what the goals are here. What would make it a successful venture or endeavor? Mike, you touched on some of this as well. What would you like to see coming out of Global Venture Catalyst?
Yeah. So, one of the real joys of having a chance to work with Ikhlaq is I think we have a shared, passion for experiential learning, right? The MIT motto is, mens et manus, hands and mind. And so a lot of undergraduate engineering study can be very theoretical. And I think the ability to give students the opportunity to live in the real world, to go beyond maybe the silos, the self-imposed silos of their campus or their state, and to connect, in a way that today is the only way things work, right? Innovation is a global team sport.
Mhm.
And so if we can expose them to a global community of like-minded, really talented technical students, help them appreciate some of the differences, give them an opportunity to apply all of their learning to a very practical project where they will be building, prototyping, creating something, and expose them to the option of entrepreneurship as a potential career path, right? It wasn't something I knew about when I was an engineer, right? It was something that, you're going to go get a job with a big company, right? And let them try it on for size.
Mhm.
I think, to me, those are some of the key elements, and I'm sure Ikhlaq has more to add to that as
Yeah,
well.
please.
Okay, yeah. Um, Definitely agree on the comment on experiential learning. What makes this a success? I think there's a number of characteristics here. One is, if anything, I'm really after the genuine benefit of the students, and there's a lot going on in the world today. For one thing, I'll say, because there's so much change, the fact is that there's also a lot of opportunity.
Mhm.
The world is kind of being prototyped or re-prototyped today, and everyone that's doing a different experiment, they're trying something. These are all versions of what the future is going to look like or can look like. And if students are stuck in their silos and not connected with each other and not working with all the resources that are out there, then they're getting a little bit held back or stuck. Sometimes students will ask me, like, what do you do during this time period, because the economy has changed, and because like the normal ways of even going to school has changed. And what I'll tell them is, the thing you don't want to do is kind of drop out of the world. You don't want to just say, well, this isn't a good time period. I'm gonna watch TV for a year, and then reemerge, later on. No, because you've got to stay connected with people. You've got to, whether you are volunteering on something, or you're working on a venture, or you're trying to get something done, you've got to keep doing those things. And then as we move from one phase to another, when we move to the phase where we're out of kind of the paralysis of it and into the rebuilding phase, then those people that have been active and that they've been doing things, they're going to be the first on the list to jump into all of the opportunities. So to me, the kind of like first version of success is that I get that activation happening, and I can get that activation hopefully on a global scale. All these students, not just in silos, but out there doing something actively, whether it's working with companies or whether it's working on their own venture.
That word silos, and thank you for underscoring that, Ikhlaq, because Mike and I heard that term a lot as far as silo breaking, getting out of silos, when we talk to engineers, entrepreneurs who were helping in the PPE space, innovating with ventilators, for example, and how they were breaking out of the traditional silos that they had been in previously, meeting with the end user quickly, talking to the manufacturer at different times, having these interdisciplinary teams. And actually kind of gets to another question that I have is the teams themselves and the makeup there, and how you've designed that to really break silos and get participants in the team exposed to people with not just countries, of course, but also expertise and backgrounds that may be different from what they're used to.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you a window into that. So let's try to understand what makes a good team to start with. If everybody on your team is identical, let's suppose, they're actually not a very good team, because they're coming from the same background. They don't have any information they can share. Nobody can say, I'm part of this network and I'm part of another network, or I have the skill and you have that other skill. When they're too similar, there's not enough economic value that's possible to create. At Berkeley, we use this term all the time: diversity equals value. And it's all about mixing different kinds of people so that you can create that to happen. However, there's certain things that you still need to be common, and there's certain things that you need to be different. So, for example, you have to have an interest in the same purpose, but you might need a different background that you're bringing to that purpose, right? So just in that way, what we can do with algorithms today is we can figure out how to match the things that should be common and how to get the maximum diversity for the things that should be different. And even behavioral characteristics of people on teams need to be different. So if you think about a good team, some people need to be very aggressive and push fast and get things done. But I can tell you, if everybody on your team is super fast and aggressive, you very quickly run over a cliff, because nobody is there to put on the brakes to say, hold on, that's a bad direction. You're really got a problem. So sometimes you need a balance of some person on your team that is actually being careful and watching for the environment. And then even if you have those two, there's another category, which is the person that connects these people. So sometimes somebody wants to do things a certain way, someone wants to do it a different way, but who's your kind of connector, your bridge, your clutch, So like teams have these inherently different capabilities in people that need to come together. So I know it's a bit of a long answer, but all of these things are factored into the algorithm that we've built that basically builds what I will call an optimal team.
Mike, Mike, I just wanted you to share your perspective on this.
Yeah, let me make it very practical for the purposes of what we're going to do with the Global Venture Catalyst design sprint. So we're looking to form teams of 5. And 4 of the 5 team members will be technical. And technical, they could be engineers, they could be computer scientists, data scientists, material scientists, food scientists, right? And so there's going to be a certain coming together based on those interests. And then, of course, to Ikhlaq's point, what are some of the complementary skills that they bring? One of the 5 team members, not surprisingly, will be a commercial or an outward focused member. And so we're partnering with the G51 Scholars Program. The G51 Scholars Program has been up and running for about 20 years. What they basically do is they work with the top 20 MBA programs in the United States, and they provide stipends and additional learning opportunities to those students who want to pursue an entrepreneurship focused, career path. And so we'll be working with them and others to also do matching between the currently matriculating MBA or undergraduate BBA or some other degree granting program where they want to focus more on what's happening outside of the 4 walls. One of the things I learned very early in my career as an engineer is the best technology doesn't win, right? The best solution to a problem wins. And often when you're a young engineer, you don't know that yet. And so you need someone to connect you to market. So that matching, I think, is critical. And then, of course, every team will get a mentor, right? Someone who has had significant experience in the world of, company formation. It could be a corporate venture role. It could be a traditional role. As a founder, it could be a VC. But again, there's another level of matching because that's an extended part of the team, right? A very important part of the team, especially for young students. So all of these things, I think, are critically vital to the success of these teams as they go through this 9-day sprint.
So interesting. Well, maybe you could also talking about specifics. How can students apply? Where should they go for additional information? We're going to include this information, of course, in the show notes for the episode.
Ikhlaq, I'll let you do that.
Okay, yeah. So the answer is that the website, which is going to be available, as of approximately November 2nd or so, is globalventurecatalyst.org. So all those words put together: Global Venture Catalyst, no spaces, .org. And that's where you can learn about the program, and that's where you can apply either as a student, as an MBA student, as a mentor, whichever way that you want to connect into this, that's the way to do it.
Great. I also want to ask you, Ikhlaq, you wrote the book Innovation Engineering, which has been influential and impactful in the field. And I'd love for you to share the themes of the book and what you were hoping to accomplish by writing it with our listeners.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the genesis of that book was that, we've been teaching entrepreneurship and innovation for, really a long time, more than 15 years at this point. And I was working with one of our partners on, what I would call like a boot camp type of program where, we teach these types of skills. And they were talking about doing a slightly different type of program, not one where people come together and get their initial ideas, but something that is more useful to people once they have their basic idea and, need to execute, need to go further with it. And I started to think about, what's the, what would we put into a program that's not at the very beginning, but a little bit, further along. And, that first turned into an article and then into, like a syllabus and, into a program. But eventually those ideas went into the book, into the Innovation Engineering book. And some of the themes of this are, well, let's see. So here's the thing, when you're starting a venture, the basic components, when you start, and this is not just a venture, when you start anything, the basic components are that there's a team of people and that team has to get pulled together. There's the story that team has, and then there's a validation of it, and then there's the execution. And usually in academics, you spend lots of time on your story, like your slide presentation, and you spend a bit of time pulling your team together. And the rest of it, you don't do in academics. But in reality, it works the opposite. The team is important, definitely, and the story is fine, but a lot more effort goes into validation, and a lot more effort than that actually goes into the execution.
Mm-hmm.
And people get this out of balance. They start to think that, oh, I've got a slide presentation. That's a company. And slide presentation is not a company. Slide presentation is just a slide presentation. And so how do you work while you're building the rest of it, after your slide presentation? That's what the focus of this book is. And this is just as true on a corporate project or on a project at school or a venture, which is you still need to do a lot more beyond have your idea. So the basic thing is that things go wrong. Even really smart teams, they go off track, and even logical plans go off track. Sometimes the issues are how the team works together. Sometimes it's the alignment of the story and what the execution that happens afterwards. Anyway, so the book is basically a framework of how to create anything new, whether that's a venture or a corporate project, student project, whatever it is, taking applied technology out of a lab and commercializing it, but going further than the slides.
Right. Great points. So important, and such a distinction that a lot of people miss. So that is really an important book, Innovation Engineering, and we'll have information about that and a link to it in the show notes as well. Mike, I'm wondering, as we wrap up, if you could share your insights on how you see the pandemic shaping engineering and entrepreneurship going forward, even after so-called normal activities resume, whenever that happens to be.
Yeah, I think, and Mark, you and I lived through this together as we spend time with a lot of projects, and I saw this firsthand through the COVID-19 ventilator challenge, right? One of the things that was shocking to so many organizations and so many innovators, designers, engineers, was that we could in fact come together and kind of really full circle back to what Ikhlaq mentioned at the top of our discussion, that we can in fact do some remarkably collaborative things together, even if we're standing on different continents. Okay, so what I think it does is it opens up this vast pool of collective wisdom that we may never thought we had the ability to leverage before, right? And so I think we're completely re-examining what it means to work together in general, but how we innovate together. And so, that I've run 200 innovation tournaments over the course of my, last 10 years or so, right? And it's always been about, the collective wisdom, right? How do we bring together a lot of great minds? And I think now this is not just sort of an event, but this is sort of a way of doing business. So, and I think that's part of why I'm so excited about this particular innovation tournament, design sprint, whatever we want to call it, is I think we're modeling for younger, engineering undergrads and the other team members that this is the new way of innovating, right? Finding world-class people and skills wherever they may be and collaborating together. So, we've seen a remarkable, growth in tools like Mural and Miro and all these collaboration tools, and we're just getting started with that. So I think that to me is an important part of it. And I know, from a personal level, having seen 200 of these things in action, the energy that is engendered in these kinds of experiences is so contagious, so infectious, that, once you get exposed to the opportunity to work with the best of the world in your field, you're always going to want to do that. You've seen the top of the mountain, and you won't settle for anything less. And I think that will actually elevate the way that the world works going forward. We're not constrained just to our local campus or our local state, right? We're bringing the whole group of humanity together to innovate. I think that's incredibly exciting.
Such a great point. Such a great point. Ikhlaq, would you like to add anything to that as we wrap up?
Yeah, so first, agree again that bring this to a global scale, and the power of connecting people that wouldn't otherwise connect is important. I'm gonna just go a little bit further and say that in some ways, and like I'll be a little careful as I say it, but the truth is the truth, that education for a lot of people has been broken. It just hasn't worked for big chunks of the population, and as a global population,
Mhm.
and you have students all over the world, including United States. They do fine at school. They listen to lectures, they do their homeworks, they graduate, and then there's a gap. Their ability to do things doesn't match up with what the problems they solved in their homeworks and the things that they did in that educational experience. And one thing that we don't want to do is fix it with more of the same. So you can't say, well, you've been watching a lot of lectures, and that hasn't been enough, so why don't we give you another lecture to watch? Well, that's not going to help. And so what do people need to get past the state that they're at? Well, on a very practical basis, they need to connect with other people. They need to be working on things that are very real. They the power of those connections and the power of that applied situation with a lighter guidance and with more effort on what you're doing and in the real context of what you're trying to do is the change. And so, this program to me is not about dial in and watch some videos. No. It's not about getting some lectures. You can get those lectures anywhere you want. You can watch them on YouTube, or you can get them at your school and so forth. That people can learn on their own any of these things. But the ability to connect into where the opportunity is happening and then use that to develop their actual applied capability, that's what's new here. And to be able, we've been doing versions of that for a long time, but now to do it on a global scale, which is connecting back to Mike's point, that's what this is about. It's about making it real, making the educational opportunity into an actual opportunity, making it real and making it global.
Yeah, and Mark, I had invited you to join me, and you saw some version of this when I was a facilitator and mentor for this startup weekend, 1,000 person 3-day hackathon around COVID-19, right?
Mhm.
And of course, it was certainly big at scale, but it was very different because there wasn't any pedagogical kind of input. Teams just kind of came together on their own. I mean, it was an incredibly noble effort, but I think we're trying to take it to a different level, right? It's a more focused effort, and it's a more balanced effort in terms of teaching, mentoring, but mostly working on things and with a longer runway to build something.
Mhm.
Right, not just over a 2.5-day weekend experience, right? So, but I think you have at least a window into what it could look like with some of the additions that we've described to you today.
Yes, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
you both suggested the durability of the relationships after the event is over. Mike, you also talked about, you don't, and, you don't know what you don't know, right? So by opening eyes, and experiences here, you're going to potentially change the pathways of how these really bright individuals interact moving forward,
Mark,
and broaden their
absolutely.
perspectives.
My students have found these kinds of open innovation tournaments to be truly transformative experiences,
Mhm.
right? There's something just magic. I don't know any other word to use, but magical about coming together with people that you have a purpose. and you're pooling your collective skills and experiences and energy to attack that target, in a short period of time, it forms unbelievably deep bonds. And it's just an exciting thing to be a part of as a participant, as an organizer, as a mentor, whatever role. These are really, truly, incredible experiences to be a part of. And I hope we have a chance to, be able to come back and talk about this incredible success that we've had and share some insights once we've run it.
Absolutely. Dr. Ihklaq Sidhu and Mike Grandinetti, such an inspiring, empowering message, optimistic, particularly during this difficult time. Ikhlaq, I really liked how you highlighted the fact that, these are challenging times, but it doesn't mean that you unplug. In fact, you do the opposite. You connect and reconnect and find new connections. And both of you are making that happen. So thank you both for the work that you're doing. I do look forward to finding out more and getting more updates, which we'll share with listeners. And listeners, thank you so much for being here on this episode of When Science Speaks. And I hope you'll be back next time for the next episode of When Science Speaks.
This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.